Good day, everyone, and welcome to another free online session at Persian Power BI User Group. My name is Vaid. I'm the organizer of this user group, and today we have a great session because the great Mim from the Fabric Cat team is with us. Hey, Mim, thanks for
Hi.
accepting my invitation.
No,
It's
thank you
great
for
to have you
inviting me.
again here, mate.
Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, that's great. We had a great session, I think. Yeah, we had a great session last year around this time in June.
Yes.
And you showed us the great things in the Fabric. Fabric was very new in those days. But
Yes.
now, this session is about a gentle introduction to Python for Power BI developers. And I have many questions, Mim.
Yep.
Because, if 2 years ago or 3 years ago, someone asked me, okay, if I need to learn Python as a Power BI developer, I would say no. Just go and learn first DAX, Power Query, and then you need to learn some Python things because that using the Python for creating the visuals is not like a very fancy things. But the general question for you is why a Power BI user or developer need to learn Python?
Yeah, the answer is it will be probably that's not what you expect. Is no, Power BI developer doesn't need to learn Python. Like all, if you know like DAX and Power Query, that's fine. You can just use those two technology and till you retire. But if, for example, personally, I believe that the reason people learn new stuff is that when you find like problems and they try to solve them. And for me personally, I got interested in Python because like I had a use case where the Power Query wasn't really the best solution. So I had to learn Python. So I would say if you want to improve your skills or try to tackle problem that cannot be easily like solved or Power Query, then I think Python will be a good skills to have. So yeah.
Yeah, especially with this Fabric, you have too many new options in hand to write the code in the notebook and then create a pipeline with that one, or even use that notebook to connect that to the databases. So I think at the moment with this new technology live, it's very good to learn the fact to learn Python, especially for Power BI developers, because you can find the better answers to the business questions using the Python. Maybe better in terms of performance, in terms of the writing the code. It's easier and it's really good. But if someone wanna learn the Python, which sources do you recommend for the Power BI developers? Is there any specific source?
Yes. So for example, just to expand on my initial answer, for example, there is one case which is very common. Let's say like there are like files and you want to copy those files into a local storage. I would say it's nearly, yeah, it's impossible to do it with Power Query because Power Query doesn't copy the raw data. Like it reads the data and clean it and generate something. But if you want just to have a copy, just like go and download file and save them in a folder. It's trivial to do it in Python. So that's an example. So the for the like where to learn Python, like just to be clear, like I'm not programmer and I'm not like specialist in Python or anything. The only thing that I, especially with Python, is you don't really need to know what you're doing. And I'll explain. As long as you understand them. So for example, you want to get some files. The problem is how to download files. Just go and search and don't think too much, try to optimize. Whatever you find in Stack Overflow, just copy it and run it, and then you will find errors. Then you do the same thing. You will just go back and search and find the solution. And you learn by, I know people like to do like learn in a more organized way, like by reading books or stuff. For me personally, I find that the best way is learn by using. And again, you don't need to be a programmer. Like if you understand just basic concept like list or how to get like files from a website, and that's it. And actually, the good
Man,
thing about Fabric, and that's the part that I found it interesting, is that the Fabric, all you need to know is how to write business logic. You don't manage any infrastructure, because before the hardest part wasn't the Python itself, is
yeah,
how to deploy it and how to run it. And Fabric like solved this problem. So
yeah,
yes,
definitely.
long answer, but just find the problem, work on it, and just do search.
Yeah, and we have a good friends, Copilot, and another friend,
Yes,
ChatGPT.
that's a new
So
option. That's a new option.
new option,
Yes,
so
but
we
if
can
you
answer your
don't,
question.
yes, if you don't, I'm because I'm always like, even in this session, like I'm talking to, I assume like you are a Power BI user, and maybe you don't even have, because by the way, I use Power BI desktop for 5 years, and all that we didn't have any license or service or anything. Literally all I have is Power BI desktop. So for me, that's my people, that's the audience, that's my background.
That's great, man. I know you have a great presentation for this session, so
Yep.
I will turn off my camera and let me bring your yes, your desktop here. So I will turn off my camera and over to you, mate.
Okay, thank you very much. So the one thing they added, the like Microsoft added, I think just last week, a couple of days ago, is the uh, task flow, and it's a way to explain. So for example, let's do it again. If someone see those files, they don't mean anything, but using the task flow, look, you can have already an idea of what's going on. So this example is the in Australia we have the something called AMO, which is Australian electricity market operator. So basically, it's a government agency that govern the electricity market, and they produce a lot of data. And for example, you have 5-minute data, which is how much power is generated and what's the price. And this exercise or this pipeline is basically taking this data and make it clean and show it into a report. So let me just zoom here. To be clear, so this section, which is OneLake, is where you store your data. This is Power BI. This section, I would say, is fixed. That's any Power BI user will be familiar with. The only thing that's different is the ingestion part. And honestly, like you can use a lot of different ways. So you can use Power Query in Dataflow Gen 2, or you can use the pipeline to copy data and do stuff, or you can use Notebook. So for me, I the only reason, like the main reason I use Notebook, because I had this code already before. So because I built this solution before Fabric was a thing. And that's the beauty of like Python code, is that you can just copy it from different platforms and vendors. So let me just go. Uh, as you may know, now we have folders, so it's much easier. Like before, it wasn't really obvious when you have all the items in the same workspace. So I'm organizing in ETL. This is all the Python code, and the OneLake, and obviously the semantic model and the report. So let's just open the report. Just give it a second. Yeah, as you can see, the report is real time. There is a lag of a couple of minutes, so it's 7:10 and 7:12. Probably you say, no, it's in the future. No, the price is always a projection for the next 5 minutes. So you will get like a lag of 2 or 3 minutes. The total number of rows is 400 million, and it's on Direct Lake. You know, like in Power BI, there are like 3 different way to connect. Obviously, the default one is import, and in most of the case, you'll be just fine with import. Direct Lake is something new that works only in Fabric, and I will explain what's all about. And you have Direct Query, which usually I would say avoid it unless you know exactly what you're doing. So yeah, so this thing is working, and I will explain instead of going to the code, let me just talk about OneLake, which I think is for me, it's the fundamental concept in Fabric. For me, like that's the core thing in Fabric. So OneLake is simply storage. Think of it as a folder in your laptop, but it's split into 2 sections. So you have this section, which is called the managed area. And this section, the way it works, if you put some files that are formatted in a certain way, it's called delta table, and then later there will have more format. Then the system is smart enough to recognize and say, do you know what, those files are tables. And you have this section, which is like literally just folders, and you can put anything. So I can show you here. They are just files. And the beauty of Fabric is like the tech to get this working is extremely complex, but they made it in such a way that it feel trivial. Like I remember when I first saw it, I thought that they are using some kind of like SSD, some kind of not local storage, but some disk, because the performance was good. And but it turned out now there it's everything is under Azure Storage, ADLS Gen 2. But the way it works is basically they create a virtual file system where, although it behave like a normal folder, the reality everything is backed by ADLS Gen 2. I think this is, in my view, maybe like one of the best thing in Fabric. I just love it. And here you have the tables. So it's like, yeah, there is nothing particularly exciting. They're just tables like in a database. So when you click, you can preview. And that's like the dual view. So here it's a table, again, as like a normal database. But when you click here, view files, the reality it's underneath are delta table files. So let me just make sure. We'll go to the first, we'll go to the presentation. Yeah, that is currently there is a bug, like when you filter, it will not go to the proper folder. The guys there were for it, and they will fix it the coming months. So the pipeline the pipeline are the three different source data. So one data is that come every 24 hours, come like exactly at 6 a.m. in the morning. The second data is data that change every 5 minutes. The other data is simply dimension tables. So let's start with dimension tables. Obviously, if you are a Power BI user, you know you need like fixed dimension, like date table, calendar table, and so on. This one is simply a dimension table. Basically, it's the state of Australia, and here the like short description and like its ID, and this is like the long description. And for example, this, if you are familiar with SQL, here I'm using a package. We'll talk about later the when what do we even mean by Python, because yeah, probably we'll talk about later. But the here I'm just running a SQL query, and then I'm having the result, and then I'm writing the result to a lakehouse. All right, so this one is for the regions. This one is a calendar table. So the SQL is generate a list between 2 dates and with interval of 1 day. And then after that, extract a year and then extract a month. And you can see here, which is the calendar. So the date, year, month. This one is calendar table, but it's at the daytime grain, because our data it's every 5 minutes. So I'm just generating a series between those 2 dates. The interval is 5 minutes, and the same thing. For this example, all right, so let's talk maybe about what's mean Python in the first place. So in order to write Python, Python is a code, but you need something to run this code. Currently in Fabric, the way to run it is in a notebook. Like we have Spark notebook, and the Spark notebook, obviously you can write Spark code in Python or SQL or Scala or whatever. And the Spark code, the Spark cluster, you can configure it here. So you come to Spark setting. Maybe make it smaller. So by default, the runtime that Fabric provide is like because that's the trick with default. Like default has to be good for the maximum of cases. But in my case, my data is rather small. Like I'm not like when I process every 5 minutes, I'm just like importing, I think, for 400 rows, and the file at every 24 hours is like 100 or maybe like 200,000 rows. So I don't need like a lot of compute. So the first thing I do is I customize my notebook to use like the smallest thing ever. So what you can do, you can come here and click new notebook, and you reduced here, you remove auto scale, and you call it something like 1 or something. And that's it. So you have customized your Spark.
Sorry, Mim, a quick one.
Yep.
Are these options different based on your license? No.
Yes, that's a great question. So here, because I'm using trial, so it gave me, so but for example, if you have F2, which is like the lowest tier, F2, the maximum you can have is just, I think, one node of medium. So the higher the skew, the more option you have. That's the point I'm trying to say, is that like you need to know, you need to understand I presume, like if you are doing smaller data, like you don't need to, if you want to optimize, because that's the point, is the point of any data engineering pipeline is try to use it as less expensive as possible. So you have the
Correct.
option. So Spark, you can customize it, and this is what I'm doing. I'm running using the smallest one, and the smallest one actually it's all right, because it's 32 gigabyte of RAM and 4 CPU. So for me it's good enough, because my data is not big. Yes, I know you're saying it's 400 million, but 400 million is after, like, it's for 6 years worth of data, but every day I just load 200,000 rows. So you have the option. That's what I'm trying to say. To go back to the question of runtime is, so we have the runtime, like Fabric give you a notebook where you can run code, and the notebook is great because you can run a lot of different, you can write SQL. If you are into SQL, you can just type SQL and it will just works. You can write Python, and for Python, you can write using different library. And this part can be confusing, because I remember when I started with this Python thing, which is quite funny. I thought that Panda, which is like a very popular library, let me just show it here in this example. Just give me one second. Yes, so this code is using Panda. All it's doing is reading file and just putting filters on it. So the first thing, I'm filtering on price, and I'm just selecting those column. Like there is nothing particularly complex. So this code is using Panda. Initially, I thought that Panda is something like by default with Python, which is not true. When people saying do ETL in Python, what they mean is do ETL in particular package. But just to make it more complicated, is there isn't really standard way. The mostly used library is called Panda, and by the way, this is what I'm using because I had already the code, so I didn't bother to. So that's I would say the mostly used. Obviously, there is PSpark, which I'm using in another notebook because it's more complex. And there are like upcoming. There are like a lot of competitor, like the people who try to replace Panda. So there are Polars. There are, for example, DACDB. There's like Data Fusion. There's a new one called Daft. So if I have to give an advice, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, like what's the if I think if you just if you are starting from scratch, I think maybe it will be a good idea just to learn PSpark or not. That's my feeling. Like if maybe like you will have later like competitive advantage in the market, because apparently people who write PSpark get paid more, or I don't know, probably I get in trouble for saying this. So the takeaway is there is no standard Python API. When people talk about Python, they mean writing code in a specific library. And you will see it in this example. we don't always use the same library. So in this file, I'm using Panda, but in another file, which is more complex, this one, because it does the process, although it processes the data only once, the initial load is consistent. It's, as I said, it's nearly 400 million. And I need like something that can handle this, this volume of data. So when I initially loaded, so what I did, when you do initial load, you come here and you change it to the best option, which is starter pool. And you run this, your workload, but it's only one-off. And once you load it, then you come back and customize it, your workload, your Spark cluster. So let's go back here. So the process is, I can, by the way, all this, you may think it's a lot of code, but I literally copy it. There is no, most of the code I just copied from the internet. So don't get scared. Or the first step is I download the file. So I create like a function here. And don't ask me what the function, because most of the code I just copy it. The function, all it does is it will get the file from this website and save it in this folder, which is source WA. And it's like all this zip file. The thing with Python is always you do like step by step. I've done the same here and save it into daily report. So it's source archive. And you get the zip file. The second step is to uncompress the files. And all it does is, because the most of the engine, including Spark, they don't like compressed files. Yeah, so you have to work on uncompressed file. Or let me correct myself. They work with compressed file, but they like I think gzip and stuff, but they don't like zip file, which is unfortunate, because if any engine can read directly zip, it will make all this this code for unzipping redundant. But yeah, you have to, that's what we have for now. So I uncompress the file, and once I uncompress, I put it archive. Yeah, I put it here. So this is the source, which is the compressed file, and I put a compressed file here, which is transform.
Quick one, Mim.
Yep.
Do we need to create those folders before, or with that destination, whatever you mentioned there, that will create a folder as well?
Love it. Now it's the code will, and this is a great question, and this is the part I love it, is the, let me show you the code here. Again, because I use this code with other system, and other system, like you need to deal with storage, and you need to do like special code to deal with storage. With Fabric, you are acting like this folder is like your laptop. All I'm doing is this function here. If the path exists, then if the path does not exist, then make the directory, just create it, and it works.
That's great.
Which is insane. Like, sorry, maybe this like 10 times I repeat it. Like those folders are in remote storage. They are in ADLS Gen 2. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm working. By the way, the best part is the code works in my laptop, and it will create those folder in my laptop. So that's like the beauty. Like you can do everything in your laptop, and just move it to Fabric. So no, it's really good. And this this is the part. This is like where probably a Power Query user may pay attention. Is this is the transformation. This is what usually the Power Query do. The thing is, here we have to define the schema. The reason is the file is messed up. The number of rows are higher than the header. Basically this file is a mess. Is because it's 4 different tables stacked on top of each other. So the way to read it is you need to read everything, which is in this case is I think 131 rows. No, not rows, sorry, columns. So you need to read the whole file and then start filtering. And the way it's so I had to define the schema here, and then all I'm doing is I'm telling PSpark to read the CSV. Yes, there is a header, and use the schema, which I defined here, and then use those files. Here I'm passing a list of files to read. So one example like why Python is cool is here it doesn't matter if you pass 1 file or 2000 file, it will work the same way. For example, if you use Power Query, you need to do like function and loop on a list or something like that. But here now it's just one code. And then you pass your filter and you say like, for this, I want the unit and I want 3. And so all I'm doing is just like normal.
And all of those.
Yep.
And all of those filters will be applied on all the files.
Yes.
So if there is a file there and that column is not there, that will handle that error or not?
No,
in Power Query you will face an issue. So you will face an error. So look, this file doesn't have that column, for example, or that table.
No, like in my case, no, it I think it would just like skip it. But keep in mind, in this particular case, I'm defining like the schema is fixed. So although those tables are horrible, but they have like fixed schema. But in case if it's not there, I think it will just not sure. Yeah, not sure. That depends. Like, do you define the schema or not? Because in this case, I'm defined in the columns.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I don't know, but I don't think I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So, and here I'm using drop. Drop is basically remove. So I'm removing columns. And then because I'm loading everything as a text, because as I said, the CSV is a messed up, then what you do is you convert. So I'm telling like the settlement date, make it to datetime, and the file, because here the file, it will give you the long path, and it's I'm interested only in the file name, not the long path. And by the way, this is important. I will come back to it. And this part, the first time when I learned, I was like blown away. Probably Power Query can do it just fine, but if you are coming from SQL, this is insane. So in SQL, for example, if you want to cast, let's say you have like 30 column and you want to change their type all to double, you have to physically write every field name, unless you do some crazy dynamic SQL, which I don't even know how to do it. But using Spark API or Panda API for that matter, or actually any API, like even DAC or Polars, you can say, give me the field name of all columns and remove those columns because I have already, like this one is date, and you get a list of columns. And then on a loop, you say, all those columns, cast them as double, which is like the numerical number. And that's it. And this thing, like you cannot, or you can do it, but it's extremely hard in SQL, but it's trivial in Python. I know there is like nearly like religious wars between Python and SQL people, but my own experience, and this is just my own opinion, like Python works very well when you take the raw data and you make it as a clean table. What I mean by clean table is something that have header and like fixed header and rows. Once you have the table in like in that form, then SQL may make more sense. But messing with file or talking to API like Python is really powerful. And again, when I say Python, I mean the data frame API, which can be anything, either PSpark or Panda or PacDB or whatever. One thing here, I just obviously in Fabric, the beauty of the system is you can use any tool you want. Like no one cares, use Power Query or data pipeline or what's called mirroring or whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. But as long as you write the result as delta table, then that's it. Like that's the key, because once your table is written here, then all the engine will just read it. It doesn't need to import or unless you want to. So the SQL will just understand it. So you can just write the SQL query on it using either the SQL endpoint or like using the SQL in Spark or using Power BI or Coastal or even like Future Engine, like we want to add. Like that's the key, is get the data, use whatever you want, and save it as delta table. And the rest become trivial. Like that's the hardest part, is how to get nice delta table. But once it's here, that's it. The rest, it's like fully automated. One thing here, just for the pipeline, the way I found it useful is when you are loading a lot of files, you need to find a way to keep history so you don't duplicate your data. One way is you put I'll show it here. So for example, this one is the big file. I put the file name in a column, and next time when I try to load, I check that if the file exists or not. So it will be useful somehow if your like source file have like unique name, or you come up with something unique, so you not like you have a reference. So here is for example, if I load file and I click run again, the system will say, no, like your file have already loaded, so it doesn't duplicate data. I found it like quite powerful. So the first one is for table pricing, and then I'm loading other table. I have this this table, and it's in Excel and CSV, as you would expect. But this one doesn't change often. It's basically wherever there is like a new solar farm or they add a new item. So it may change like maybe once a month or every couple of months. One thing here about the thing that like I learned, and sorry if the presentation seems like not very organized, but if you have to learn like one thing very important is like never, like when you have a notebook, don't go here and schedule, and because this one I run it only once a day, so I don't care that much. But something that you care about, let's say this one that's run every 5 minutes, yeah, turn it off. So any job that you care about, don't use the default scheduler, the default way to run schedule. Instead, create scheduler data pipeline. And I explain you why. First, data pipeline is extremely cheap, so don't worry about the cost. The reason why is you can always define the timeout. So here I'm telling the system, like whatever happened, the maximum is 50 minutes. And the only reason I put 50 minutes because sometimes I run optimize, which take time. That depends on your workload. So if you have a pipeline that, if you have a job that usually take 10 minutes, then just put 20 or something like that. So if something goes wrong, then the maximum will be 20 minutes. So that's the one reason. The second reason is concurrency. In this example, I want the job to run only one time. I don't want like two jobs to run at the same time because the file is arriving every 5 minutes. There is no point to have like multiple concurrent jobs, and you can control that here. So always, if you care about particular job, like use data pipeline, and it costs like nothing, and it's worth it. Sometimes you may have stuff that you cannot control, like imagine that you're doing you have like an issue with a network, so you're, let's say, external access, so you may end up like having a notebook that just have access, and you will be just wasting resource for nothing. So this one is important. The second one is, let's go back here. I'm using the semantic model and I'm using DirectLake. And DirectLake simply means that Power BI is acting as let's say, an engine, as a server, and it's not importing the data to the proprietary format, because Power BI by default use like in-house proprietary format. Power BI here is reading directly from Delta table, which is simply Parquet file. And the performance, I would say, is good, and that it has like an advantage is that, especially if you have like big data or data that change a lot, like in my case, change every 5 minutes, then you don't pay, like you don't wait for the refresh, because the data, as long as is updated, it's there. But there is a catch, is it's very sensitive to the layout. And one thing is, and actually this is not specific to Power BI, all App Engine, basically all the database engine that serve analytical workload, they hate small files. So make sure that, let's come here. that you don't have a lot of small files. But obviously in my case, I do have a lot of small files because I'm loading small data every 5 minutes. So the Power BI will just behave fine, but then you reach a point where you will get like you start noticing degradation of performance. So the trick is you try to optimize not every 5 minutes, because that will be a waste of, that will be like too expensive because there are a lot of resources. But I'll show you here what I'm doing. So here, all I'm doing is that basically every like 50 rands. So I don't know, like 50 multiplied by 5 minutes. Okay, I'm doing live stream. I don't know how long. Maybe it's like 3 hours or something. The Spark will run and optimize. And optimize, basically what it does, it will take all those small files and rewrite it in a bigger file. Obviously, it's an expensive operation because it's read a lot of data. But at the same time, it just happens like once every 3 hours. So it's because the lake house currently, like today, doesn't have like automatic maintenance. So you need to make that that decision. Again, these things matter only like when you have a lot of small file. Like if you don't have, then like forget it. Don't worry. But if you deal with small file, this one, it works well for me. Like the every 3 hours I run and optimize, and I keep like a good performance. There is another way for your case is you can, let me go back to OneLake. So make sure is you can run the maintenance, but the it's a manual operation. So it will apply the optimize and make the order. The order is it's a technique that's done by, it's specific to Fabric, and Fabric engine basically, yeah, actually it's used even in Power BI, like in Vertipack. Basically it's like an algorithm that will just read all the columns and change the sort of, reorder the columns in in such a way to reduce the size. So this is more or less how it's proprietary stuff, so I don't really know how it works, but that's the idea. And the thing is, it's not marketing, it's like real, it makes a real difference. Actually, I made a test, which is not, maybe it's worth sharing here. Yeah, so I loaded like a lot of files using different Python engine, and obviously I used Spark with the order, because Spark is the only engine that, sorry, let me just, so obviously it's the same data, so like we're doing the same thing. This is the total row, which is like 8 million. And the size for Spark is 54 megabyte. And the other engine is 85 megabyte, and Polaris, I don't know what it's doing, it's 100 megabyte. So that's substantial. And the thing is, you may think between 85 and 54 is not a big deal, but actually it's a very big difference, because what happened is, think of it of there is no free lunch, so you have to pay the price somewhere. You can say I don't care. I will just keep those small files. But then later what happen is you will pay like extra. It will cost you more into the read. And the point is, I presume I'm talking to Power BI, like I'm a Power BI user. I care more about read than write. I don't care about the performance if a job take, let's say, 3 minutes to write instead of 1 minute. I don't care. But what I care about is the performance of Power BI. If something that a query that should take 2 seconds and 1.5 will make a massive difference. So always think about because like what's the point of all this? Like personally, I don't find joy in doing that. Like why we're doing this? Just for one thing, we want to prepare data for Power BI. So we need to optimize for Power BI. Like never forget that. Like the point is not to be fancy in Python, or we do this just for one thing, is that we will prepare data here so Power BI can read it. That's it. That's the only purpose. And the best optimization, the better for the user, because the user, like when you build like a report, the user absolutely don't care like what tool you are using. They don't care if you're good in Python or not, or use Power Query or Spark or 10 node or OneNode. All they care about is when they open the report, it has to be fast. So you need to keep in mind that the optimization is important. Just like the typical semantic model. There is nothing particularly fancy here. This is like the joy of live.
Yeah.
It just works, but for some freaking reason.
Always happen during the live sessions. Always.
All right. Anyway, it decided that come on. Let me just refresh it. Let's go back here to. So one thing here. So again, like once you have those table, the system will just read. And by the way, this is like the lakehouse view. And for people who are into SQL, you just like switch and that's it. Like you have a SQL and you can write.
SQL query there.
Yep. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know why they put like top. It's because it's a big one. So yeah, so it's 400 million. So I'm not. And the thing is it's just there. Like that's the beauty of Fabric is once you put the data here in as delta, then it's accessible to all the engine. So your pain is basically how to prepare it. And here, like you need to do work. Even like in Power Query, you need to do work too. So, but once you have the table here, then the rest is just.
Yeah, and the good thing is you have all the options in hand. Write in the Python, then write in the SQL. You can connect the Dataflow to write the MCO, then connect it to Power BI, DAX, and many other things you can write there. But yeah, that's really great. and knowing this Python will help you. Some, for example, managing and running the ETL for 14 million rows in the Power Query sometimes is a little bit hard because those number of steps are important to find out how you can process and run the ETL in a good performance. But writing with Python, I find it a little bit easier. I'm not a Python expert. My knowledge
I'm not.
0 to 10 is zero actually.
No, I'm not. I just copy stuff from other people. That's the.
Yeah, I always ask Copilot or ChatGPT. So, but yeah, but what I want to try, what I try to say is with the Fabric we have all these options in hand, and that's a great
Yes.
thing about this the Fabric. Yeah,
No, no, absolutely. And by the way, like here, the like don't, because a lot of people get nervous, like they think they they think it's totally different, or like this part, it's like any Power BI user, like this part is let's say traditional Power BI. Like all this is the same, like DAX and Power
yeah,
Query and report, it's the same. All we're saying is like um, you have more option if you need to. If you, if for example, you are a Power BI developer and you are lucky, like you have data engineers that prepare data for you into database and you have access, then it's fine. But with Fabric, you have more options. And the
correct.
reason
Yeah,
for me, I do care about this because personally, like 5 years ago, I was in a situation where I needed to do stuff that Power Query didn't support, and obviously IT was not there. That data engineers, they didn't care either. So I wish like we had something like that 5 years ago. So, but now with Fabric, the only, to be honest, the only limit is if you are not interested into learning. But they try to make it as simple as possible. Like you don't need to worry about authentication and this like service principle and registering an app and all this complexity when you try to deal with enterprise data. Here you have a workspace, you have capacity, and you do your thing. If if you don't, like you would say, maybe I don't have access, you can learn like Python in your laptop. It's a free, you can just download it, and it's not complicated. And speaking about, because I thought a lot about what's the future of Python API, and but the reality is not true. Like the why, like even me, like here, I'm still using Panda because that's like the most popular one, and when you search, this is where you find code. So like don't overthink it. It's just use wherever makes sense to you, and it's not, again, it's not complicated, but obviously you need to make an effort.
okay, so there is a question here in the
Yep.
chat from Andres. The question is this all in a Fabric workspace, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
There is
Okay.
not like that's why it's very important. Like I have a personal policy. That's not Microsoft. That's my own policy. Like if you use Fabric and they ask you to use something else, like in Azure, or it means like we're not doing our work. Everything is in Fabric, and we're not like 100%, but that's the idea. Like the one capacity, you buy one capacity and like you do everything.
Correct. And all of those features are available for all different type of the capacity
Yeah, yeah,
license
yeah.
the license you buy there. Yeah. And then
Yes, no,
you
the main one is the for the Fabric is because Fabric license is the more or less the same as Premium. So if you the main one, I'm not talking about Copilot, and but the main one,
yeah,
again, I'm expecting, I'm talking to Power BI user. If you want free reader, then you need uh, the FSQ 64, which is the equivalent of P1. But the rest is like Python and OneLake, and it's the same. You can just buy F2, which cost, I think, maybe 200 something per month. But then it's pay as you go, so you can just turn it on. Actually, I know. Okay, well, I know some people, like, the way they do it is they buy like F2, like especially for a smaller company, which that's something that interests me personally. Is let's say you have just Power BI Premium, you don't have. Sorry, you have only Power BI Pro. What you can do is just you can go to Azure and spin up like an F2, do the ETL, turn it off, and just do an import, and that's it. It costs you like nothing. Like you can run your jobs. Maybe it will cost you like $1 per day or something like that. So the
Yeah,
cost
that's
is not an
other
issue.
good things about the Fabric. You can turn it, you can pause it, you can
Yes.
turn it on and turn it off, and
Yes.
you will pay only for that amount which
Yes.
you keep it on. Yeah,
Yes. Absolutely. Yep.
that's great. That's great. There was another question in there. I think that question was about the Python visual in Power BI, and then that was specifically about the Python visual in Power BI server. I don't know. Do- Maybe I haven't used Power BI report server in my life, so I don't know we can use the Power Python visual in Power BI server or not. But and I don't know how many people are using the Python visual even in the Power BI desktop because I never used that one. That's really good, but there are some limitations, and I didn't have any use cases to use it. But do you think using the Python visual in Power BI is something necessary, or is there any business question we can answer for that with that?
Probably depends, but I will just talk about my personal experience. So it wasn't great, to be honest. Like I used Python into long time ago before we had icon map. So like if you want to do any complex maps, then icon map, like with maybe it's a custom visual, but it's maybe one of the best option. And I use Python, and it wasn't really worth like a lot of trouble. Like it wasn't interactive. The speed was not there. So I would say try just to use, because like the Power BI native visual, like they made massive progress. I think it's better not. Personally, I wouldn't use, but that's just me for myself.
And have you ever used that in the Power BI report server? Do you know we can use it in there or no?
No. I use it, and it wasn't good.
Okay,
No, it
good.
wasn't good
Okay.
because what happened is you need, like users, what they want. Like initially I told them, no, it's not possible. I will just show you an image, and they said, no, we're fine. Just show me. But then what happened? They want to click and cross filter and do all these things. And because the data I was showing a map of a solar farm, and
Mm.
you're into construction, so
Yeah, I
there is
know.
like a lot of files in solar farm. So I had like to put a lot of point, and we're talking like I think 200,000, and trying to show 200,000 point at the same time using custom visual, using Python. It wasn't actually, maybe wrong. Maybe it was R. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But usually
Okay.
I wouldn't. I prefer not to use either R or Python for visualization. But this is just me.
Yeah.
This is not like an official.
Yeah. There are many maybe business questions they can answer using the R or Python. That those R and Python visuals, but I think for the common business questions we can answer them with the other visuals in Power BI. There are many
Yep.
good visuals there. There are some custom visuals like DNP or
Yep.
the icon map. We can use it to customize the visual and create everything from the scratch. But that's great. That's great, mate. It was a great presentation, mate. I
Thank you.
really enjoyed and learned many things, and I need to spend some time to digest those things. Very great things. Hopefully, we can have some other meetings in the future.
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. No, thank you
thank
for
you
inviting
so.
me. That was very kind. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure, guys. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, everyone, for spending your time with us. And catch you later. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.